Let's go live with Jack Kelly. Welcome to the one-of-a-kind LinkedIn live show that will help you with your job search and advancing your career. We will bring in educated career experts who will share their insights and give you inside tips on how to be successful in your job search. Now let's get into today's show with your host, Jack Kelly.
Okay. All right. Meeting is now streaming. We are live. Welcome, Lee. Andrese. Now, I was going to make it sound really more, Andrese.
Andrese. You want to say it like the family.
Oh, that is good.
I like
it. Andrese.
Yes. Thanks for having me.
How's that good? Is that
Andrese?
Did I do a good job?
That's good.
Perfect.
That's
so,
good.
Lee, today we could, maybe Lee could give it, tell a little bit about herself because she has a ton of experience as a recruiter, knows this area really well, is a career advisor, full of energy and passion and drive. So maybe tell a little bit about yourself and then we'll just jump into everything.
Yep, I think long and short of it is I stumbled into the staffing industry in recruiting. I stumbled literally because it started out as a really bad experience as a temporary employee. And so I was challenged to change the perception of the industry way back when, and I haven't stopped doing that. I haven't stopped trying to do that. So I really am on a mission to make sure that recruiters, recruiting, staffing companies, and the people who are represented by those individuals who are representing them have a phenomenal experience. And I just so happen to be a geek, so I specialize in certain areas like marketing, creative, and digital. So.
Well, that's good. And, for people who are watching this, I think sometimes you hear recruiter and just think it's like one size fits all. It's like you hear doctor and you think it's just a doctor, but there's so many specialties. Maybe Lee, you could, and we're going to just dive into this, guys. So maybe, Lee, what you could do is walk through like, hey, the different types of recruiters. And the goal is so that if you're going to deal with a recruiter, what's good, what's bad, what's ugly, what's horrible, how they could help, how they could hurt, find the good ones, the bad ones. And no holds bar. We'll just be really transparent and really honest and probably get a lot of hate from people, but what are you going to do? Yep. So maybe you could just kind of give a little background on it.
Yeah, so first of all, not all recruiters are good recruiters. Not all hairstylists, just because they have a license, are good cutters or good stylists. And not all physicians, just because they have a degree, are good at what they do. To find really what I call exceptionally superior recruiters it's really based on their story. How does the recruiter articulate what they do and the impact that they make in their own profession? And that means not only for the organization that they represent, the brand that they represent, but for the people that they represent. If they can't tell you how they've helped people land a job, at a better job or at a higher rate, or get them exposure into some of the brands that they really dream about, then you're working with somebody who is just shuffling papers. They're looking at your resume and they're going to submit you if your keywords align.
So what you're saying, Lee, is like one of the first things you have to do is find out, hey, who is this recruiter? Is this somebody who is an expert in my field? They know the industry. Do they have pull with the different companies? Can they get your foot in the door? And if so, that's cool. But if you find out that they don't, it's just you're wasting your time, right? Then it's like you're dealing with somebody that just, I don't know what they're going to do, just like throw in the resume and hope for the best. And what other, there are a bunch of different types of recruiters. So Lee, maybe you could kind of walk through contingency, retained.
Yep. Even before we get into that, Jack, sure. I want to take a step back into that. Picking that really great recruiter, because not only should that recruiter have all the things that you just mentioned, but they should be on your side. They should look at the talent as they are the product. They are what that recruiter is representing. If that recruiter doesn't understand what you do, right? If you're talking to a recruiter who has no clue what you do or the impact that you make, can't pull that story out of you, can't articulate your value and the impact that you're having on an organization, you are shortchanging your career. You're putting your trust, your brand, your career, your resume, your future in the hands of that recruiter, right? Whether you're an in-house recruiter or whether you're a third-party recruiter, especially if you're working with a third-party recruiter, your brand can suffer if the right person isn't representing you. So I stop telling people, stop looking at these people as recruiters, start looking at them as your personal representation, your brand, right? So now you're just changing the entire conversation of that relationship with a recruiter. So when you start talking about the layers of recruiter or the levels of recruiter, that's when you know when somebody is asking you. Last week, we just had this happen. One of my clients came to me and said, I talked to a recruiter who just wanted to know how much I wanted to make, when I could start, and what geographical location I was in, and how I would get to work. And then they were going to submit me.
And that's it.
That was it.
Yeah, that's great.
And so that's when I start speaking Sicilian, Jack.
That's when it comes. That gets you a little angry. That gets you heated, huh?
Because this is the frustration that candidates have. At that point, you're talking to a sourcer. And then add another layer onto that. You may never talk to that sourcer. That conversation may happen on email. So now
I can never understand that. By the way, I don't mean to. I can't understand to this day how you could get a relationship with somebody and you're going to represent them as a recruiter or you're a job seeker, and just by going back and forth on text or emails.
Because they only care about the paper, Jack.
Because how do you get to know somebody? You really don't know them.
Yeah.
Who they are. Like I'll go to a phone call because sometimes like Lee and I spoke before on the phone. So this way, for anyone listening, I wasn't being a jerk and mispronouncing her name. We were teasing and talking about it because my wife's Italian, she's Italian. They're from Calabrese. Wait, I said it wrong, right? Calabrese. So even on the phone, even if you don't have a Zoom call, and God forbid now you can't meet people in person, but what are you going to do? But at least on the phone, you get a feel for them. Because just an email and a text. It's ridiculous. And if a recruiter is just going to do that, just run away. I mean, it's just not.
Delete.
Because then it shows they don't care, right? If they do that, isn't that is a tell that they don't want to put the time and effort in, and it's just like, if they're doing that, I wonder. It's just like, okay, I'm going to get 20 people, throw it against the wall, and maybe one will stick, and I'm not going to invest a lot of time and energy.
So this is what's happened to the recruiting profession. That's when you know that you're talking to a sourcer.
Yeah.
And so how you want to handle those emails, if you don't do what I do, which is delete them, if you want to engage with that type of a relationship with a sourcer, your next email back should be, I'm happy to discuss my qualifications with you and my past performance, meaning the impact that you've made. Tell me what your hiring process is. I have yet to hear back from one of those sourcers to this day. And that's been going on for years. And there are certain staffing solutions that are out there that work on nothing but the speed of getting candidates into a pipeline, the MSPs, right? They focus on nothing but whether they're direct hire or contingent, it doesn't make a difference. You are against the clock. So now you've got these pools, and I mean hundreds, if not thousands of people trying to feed a pipeline of resumes just to get it into the system. So they don't have time to sit and talk and qualify candidates. That's part of the problem right there, is the processes. Processes have driven the behavior, not the other way around.
Have you noticed this? I've been recruiting coming on like 25 years. And when I first started, the average age of an internal HR person, they didn't call it talent acquisition then, it was maybe let's say 30 to 55 or so, and they really knew their stuff. Now the average age is 22, 23, and nothing wrong with 22 or 23-year-old, but like you're saying, with a sourcer who is just kind of getting resume flow, they don't have that knowledge, and I'm not blaming them, because how could they? They're 23, they don't have experience, they're not being trained for it. So for a job seeker, that could be really frustrating, because let's say they're sending to me and I'm a sourcer, and I really don't know, like, with all the years experience, if I had to like recruit for a Java programmer and things like that, I wouldn't know what to do. You know what I mean? Like as a recruiter, you're not going to know everything. You're going to know some things, and you're not going to know a lot of things. So I wouldn't be able to help. And I think that's where a lot of the frustration too, I'm curious of your opinion, comes in for job seekers, because they're dealing with a representative of the company, either, outside or inside. And your first experience is like, what? This person doesn't know what I do. They're not asking questions. I think they don't ask questions because they don't know the answer. So they don't want to ask questions.
They don't.
You see that
And
too?
yeah. No, I'm with you on that. So that is the progression of the
Yeah.
quality of a recruiter that you're getting. So you've got the sourcer, then you've got a recruiter who may be a representative of the brand, and they're also doing a checklist of things, right? So they've agreed with the hiring manager, whether they're internal or
Mhm.
external, doesn't make a difference. They've agreed that these are the minimum qualifications that we need to validate before they get an interview with the hiring manager. So now you've gone through a sourcer. Now you're going through maybe an entry-level recruiter. The next level is to talk to a subject matter expertise recruiter, a recruiter who is knowledgeable in technology and marketing and design, whatever it is. So now you're starting to elevate the qualifications and the conversations as a candidate that you're having with that recruiter. And you know that you're working with an exceptional recruiter when that recruiter tells you you're going to die in this role. It is not going to give you what you want. If the recruiter's first question if the recruiter's first question isn't, what do you want out of your career? What do you want that next job to look like? And then offer you the opportunity to look at the position that they're trying to fill. It's just putting the cart before the horse.
You know what? That's such an important part, Lee. That's such a great thing that you said, because what I've seen firsthand is this, and I'll do that. If, let's say, I'm representing you and I just know it's not going to be the right fit and you're not going to be happy and they're not going to be happy, but I do feel I can make that placement. I'm not going to do it I'm not saying this because I'm a nice guy. I'm saying it because as a business person, it's just going to end up blowing up because you're going to maybe go there, take the job, and then within a month, hate it. And they're going to know that you're unhappy, and then you leave. And then as the recruiter, they're going to blame me and it's my fault. So
Yeah.
it just doesn't pay. It just doesn't pay to do.
Yeah, but you know what, Jack? Your motives are not just about not looking bad.
Yeah.
Your motives, Jack, and I know this to be true because I know people who have worked with you. But the fact of the matter is that you're not just concerned about your brand and your company and having that negativity on the company and the service you provide. You're also concerned about that human being. You're talking about what it is that you're having to do for a candidate. An exceptionally superior recruiter does for the candidate what the candidate won't do for themselves, which is say no.
It's so true. It's like, because if the way I look at it is this, if I'm helping somebody out, it's like, I take on this responsibility. I'm going to do everything I can and be really honest about everything. And again, it is weird because to me, it's just easier to do that, if that makes sense. Like, you know what I mean? Just to be myself, talk about, hey, this is what's good. This is what's bad. This is what you got to watch out for. Here's the pluses, here's the minuses, because, in the long run, then they trust you, they believe in you. And then also you feel better about yourself because it's not like you got to worry, oh, I didn't tell them this one because I didn't want them to know that. And then it's going to come up anyway. So I find out it's just better to do that. And there's so many recruiters who don't, you know what I mean? They'll just say the good stuff, not say the bad stuff, hype the good stuff and make up good stuff. And then it just ends up in tears, And it's so dumb.
Speaking of tears, Jack, I will tell you that I'm deviating from my typical focus and helping a friend who's standing up a healthcare company. And I'm interviewing nurses and RNs and CMAs for the very first time. And as I'm talking to these women and men, I ask them one question, just one question. What's your most significant accomplishment? Do you know not one of them have been able to articulate it? And I've gone through at least 600 people.
Wow.
Not one.
That is.
And when I finally pulled it out of these people,
Yeah.
you know what happens to them? They're in tears. They said, you're the first person, recruiter, who's ever asked me what I have done to help, really do something significant. That is what recruiters have a responsibility to do, is to help people understand the impact that they make. And you know what happens when they do that? The bill rates go up, the pay rates for the talent go up, the quality of service goes up, the more selective we can be, the more confidence we'll have in saying, if you don't want to work with me, you don't have to. As a company, as a client, right? I am very careful about picking and choosing my clients because I choose who goes in my portfolio on the talent side and the client side.
Yeah. I find it, I'm curious what you see too, is that oftentimes it's really hard for people to give an elevator pitch, to articulate what they're good at, what they want to do. when they ask that question, so tell me about yourself, they'll go back to like middle school and start saying everything. And the interviewer is like, what? No, I don't really mean that. I mean, what do you do relative to the job? And I'm a little thrown off by it because, and we were talking about this earlier, where, before I started Recruiter, I would deal with more Wall Street's, higher end professionals. So they kind of knew their stuff, but a lot don't. I mean, what do you do when you speak to candidates? Like, do you find out they really know how to pitch themselves and how to tell their story, or do you coach them all along?
No, interesting you say that. Storytelling is actually my premier gift. I can extract stories out of people based on their successes because I ask the right questions and I know what to listen for. Now I have actually created a number of different online solutions and workshops around just that, Jack, just to help people articulate what it is that they do and the impact that they make. And then we spend an awful lot of time practicing that, because I will tell you, more often than not, people do not get the offer in an interview when they can't tell their story. Yeah. That is the number one problem. They get in there and they freeze up, or they talk around the real meaty stuff because they just don't understand business enough to understand how what they do impacts a business. So I take it back to, do you understand what it takes for a business to succeed? And let's tie everything you do to profit, revenue, and brand awareness. If you can tie what you do to even if it's indirect, even if it's 2-3 layers down, you are still helping that company succeed. They hired you for a reason. What was that business problem? And that's how you build your portfolio. And if you saw what I was doing back here, my hands are moving all over the place. So I'm trying not to, but you can see me bopping around.
That's cool. Go for it. It's a very casual thing. Do whatever, talk with your hands. That's awesome.
I'm getting all over the place.
That's all right. That's cool. Go for it. No worries. Why do you think it is, though, that people, is it because maybe before the pandemic, it was such a hot market for a lot of people that they just didn't have to? And so those muscles atrophied and they didn't really have to sell themselves much? Because it's out there. What do you think?
No, I think this is happening in college. Nobody teaches you in college how to represent yourself.
Oh, without a doubt.
It's just not taught. And only I was very lucky. I have a choir of angels that surround me, because every person I have ever reported to in the industry has understood the impact that people make on a business. So I was taught very, very early on how people make an impact in an organization. And that's called business acumen. Most people do not have an understanding of business acumen, and therefore it's very hard for them to articulate. Or, Jack, how many people have you spoken with who just say, I just do this. I just do that. Or the receptionist of a company. Remember when we used to have receptionists, Jack?
I'm old enough to say yes.
Do you remember,
Can I tell you, I'm old enough to say I would get faxes for resumes. I'd put ads in the New York Times and the Classified, and I come in on Monday, and the faxes would be coming off the machine. So,
I remember when faxes were new. I'm not
excited about it. You're like, how can you put a piece of, so a Gen Z is like listening to this and say, like, what are you talking about?
What is that? What is that? Or taking an ad in the paper, a help wanted ad in the paper.
I gotta admit, like, I would go in and I would think, like, this is magic. How do you put a piece of paper in a machine here, and it's going to go to you, in Maryland?
Well, Jack, unless you looked above and saw the little particles trickling through the air, like, you were safe. You were safe. I actually started doing one of these. Like, where's it going? Where's it going? But little did I know it was actually happening. But I will tell you, because we're missing the business acumen. Let me just give you a real story here. 2 stories. The first story is of a receptionist that I used to represent. She was making, I'm going to say $15,000 a year. I got her $18,000 on her next gig.
Nice.
Why? Because, this was decades ago, right? Only because I said she earns that $3,000 because she's the first face and voice of your brand. Don't you want her to do this, right? So that's your receptionist. And then how about the people that used to, clean the floors? Those people were getting minimum wage. I would get them double. I says, what's a lawsuit cost you? Because your floors weren't clean enough, or somebody slipped on them because they didn't have so it's the implication of not having you in the company, which elevates the value of that candidate and the impact that that person has. So it's the implication of not having the positive impact that the candidate has that elevates the salary and elevates what I charge, right?
Yeah.
The companies. If you want somebody to come through this level of recruiter, then this is the rate. So the other thing is that one of the candidates that I inherited from another gig, he was at $30 an hour, which is not a shabby, I'm sorry, $60 an hour, which is not a shabby income. I got him to $90 in 6 months an hour.
Big difference.
Huge difference. And it's not like I did anything magical, you know? All I did was say, I just asked the Lou Adler question of all time. What was your most significant accomplishment? And fortunately, he had somewhat of an idea, but I yanked it out of him. And I said, oh, you did this, this, and this. Mm-hmm. The next call that I made to a hiring manager, I said, if you want to work with this guy, this is what it's going to cost. No argument. No argument, Jack, because the impact that somebody makes has value.
You know, it's
you just got to find the match.
You know, impact, but, and I think you probably agree with this, it's just asking. Like so many people, if you're a job seeker or you're a recruiter or like even in sales, you got to ask for the order. Like if you don't ask, it's not going to happen. So you got to ask. And that's a big thing too, to be bold enough to say, hey, I'm worth $90 an hour, or I'm worth 100,000 salary, or I'm worth 200,000 and to fight for it. Now that's assuming you really do, because some people have inflated self-worth and they may not, but let's take, you know, that they really have the goods and they could do it. Yeah. Then you gotta, you know, now this market's a little tougher, but you got to stand your ground and pitch yourself and make it work. Or if you have a recruiter that should work, it's almost like a talent agent, the way you were describing it before, Lee. It's like, instead of a recruiter, it's like a talent agent who's representing you and doing the best to get you, you know, get you that great job with the money you want.
That's right, Jack. People have a hard time asking for money because they can't articulate why they deserve it.
Yeah.
If they could articulate why they deserve it, and if a recruiter isn't helping you do that, then you're working with a sourcer. Yeah. You're working with somebody who's comparing a job description and a resume, finding the keywords and saying, here, hiring manager, good luck, God bless. When you're dealing with an SME recruiter, you are dealing with somebody who will advocate for you or who will tell you the truth as to why you are not qualified for that position, but you might be qualified for this. Yeah. And they will coach you on how to tell your story so that you believe what you're saying based on the facts and based on evidence that can be substantiated. And the hiring manager will say, oh my God, where have you been? Because I really need your help. And remember that's the other thing, Jack, is that candidates forget that they're the talent. The hiring manager is in need of talent. They can't grow in their career and they won't meet their company objectives without the candidates. So stop looking at yourself as an employee and you have to throw yourself on the mercy of the court to get a job. No, this is your time, Jack. This is your life. This is your talent. This is your portfolio. You choose which customer, AKA hiring manager, you want to serve. Big difference. So stop thinking like an employee, start thinking like a contractor or a provider, like a provider of a service, and that you bring value to the table too. So again,
this is the coach coming out, right?
This is the coach coming out.
You do that as well.
This is the kind of recruiter or talent agent you want to represent. You want representing you, not somebody who's just going to fling a piece of paper.
Yeah. It's
pretty exciting though, isn't it? It's a lot more fun when I talk about that, right?
you know? It's so, the challenge I see now, and this is going on pre-COVID, is that it used to be internally, the recruiters would kind of give candidates guidance. Hey, you know, Lee, you did good in this, but not so great. And you got to work on that. You know, when you meet Jack for the next interview, here's what you should do. And that doesn't happen so much anymore. And that's rough because it's a disadvantage for the job seeker. So I think to follow up on your point, they should kind of push the recruiter to do it. Even if they in turn get pushback from the firm, they should do it. You know what I mean? Like, I'll go to you, the hiring manager, and it's like pulling teeth, but you got to do it because you need as much information to pass back to that job seeker so they could do a good job. So they know what they did well, what they didn't do well, what to work on, what not to work on. you know, the little inside tips about the company.
Do
All
you
that
know
kind
what
of stuff.
makes the best recruiters the best recruiters?
What's that?
They have a pool of candidates they can take with them wherever they go. Or those candidates are their candidates for life. Or their hiring managers, customers are their customers for life. I'm still friends with people that I worked with in the 80s, candidate and client side.
That's amazing.
I mean, that's it, because you care, you know, you want to work with a recruiter who cares. So I think that there's a root problem that's happening with the recruitment industry, whether it's in-house recruiting or third-party recruiting. And I think it's the speed is lessening, right? We need things yesterday. People wait too long to get their recs through a company. So by the time that they get to that interview point, they are in such pain that all they want are a bunch of resumes, let me qualify them and move on. So now you've eliminated the need for a SME recruiter because the hiring manager is now just saying, these are the 3 questions I want you to qualify, recruiter, hand me the rest. So we've got to look at the processes that are driving the relationships that recruiters are allowed to have. Again, I'm going to go back to the medical industry. Look at how much time you've got to spend with a doctor, 15 minutes. Is that the way it has to be with recruiters?
Yeah, you know, here's what happens. Give you a little insight for what I see from working. Let's say I'll do a lot of contingency, even though they're fairly paid folks. It becomes very ugly because a company, let's say company widget company international, will say, "Hey Jack, we want you to help with this role," but then they'll go to you, Lee, and give you the role. Then they'll give it to 10 other people. Then they'll
There
post
you
it on
go.
Indeed and post it on LinkedIn.
Yep.
So now you create this really ugly bunch of hungry dogs fighting for the bone.
Right.
And it's gross for everybody. So
Yep.
that, yeah, if I find a candidate who's good, I want to kind of jump on that candidate and get that candidate before anyone else. So, but it's like diminishing returns, because then it's just it's a feeding frenzy, and you don't have the time to do everything you want. You just want to get that okay from a job seeker to say, okay, I got your resume, let me send it in. So the way the whole system works, it's kind of flawed. I don't want to say broken because that's such a cliche, but the way it plays out, it just doesn't help anybody, because then you get 10 recruiters calling you up, annoying you, and you're like, why is this recruiter annoying you, calling me? And they are, because they realize, hey, I could place Lee and I can make a placement fee, and if I don't annoy you and try to get you to go on that job, someone else will, and I'm gonna lose out on a fee.
Right.
So that's the kind of
We've created that. We've created that. The recruiting industry has done that to itself. The recruiting
How do you
industry
think?
has done it to itself. Yes, because we've allowed it to happen. We've allowed it to happen. We need an association at the highest level saying that this is the best practice for working with recruitment within the recruitment industry and with recruiters, right? But instead, you've got 4 to 5 recruiters from different organizations that are calling the same talent. How can you differentiate yourself as an organization if that's happening? It's nearly impossible. It's nearly impossible.
It's not a good look for the company either, because they're
no,
they think something's
it's
wrong.
not.
Like, what's wrong with company widget company international when I get 10 people calling? Because something got to be wrong. Because why are they getting 10 recruiters to work on it and posting it everywhere? Because if it was a good job, you wouldn't have to do that. So it does. It's like a blemish.
That's right. And have you noticed that candidates are starting to put in their LinkedIn profiles, no third-party recruiters?
Oh yeah.
That to me is the ultimate slap in the industry's face. When you have got exceptional talent putting notes in their LinkedIn, bold, italicized, third-party recruiters not welcome. And how about companies who are putting that in their job postings? Third-party recruiters not welcome. I mean, this is what it's come to, and I draw the line at that. So for candidates, if you have candidates watching this, which I know you do, if you're looking for a job, one of the questions that you can ask the recruiter is, I'm sorry, my neighborhood dogs are just starting to sound the alarms.
I have 2 Shelties, that's cool, 2 cats. They're not around, so it's quiet. It's all good.
So, all of the neighborhood dogs are out now. So for those who are looking for a job, there are 2 or 3 qualifying questions that you can ask that recruiter. Number 1 is, are you a direct representative of that organization, of that brand? Are you a sourcer? Are you just screening entry level? And then the third I always ask is, do you understand, do you understand what the business problem is that they're trying to solve with this position, right? Every position that's open, Jack, is trying to solve a business problem. If the recruiter doesn't understand what that business problem is, you are likely dealing with a sourcer, internal or external, who's not going to be able to answer a lot of your questions. Set your expectations is what I'm trying to get to. As a candidate, set the expectation so that you're not disappointed. Understand that you could be dealing with a sourcer, a subject matter recruiter, or a talent agent. 3 very different types of recruiters. Does that make sense?
It does. And then also I'd add too, that you want to make sure whatever recruiter you use really knows, and we kind of alluded to this before, knows that area and knows, because that's the value they could bring to the table.
Yeah.
So let's say for someone like myself, and I do a lot of compliance, these are people who are trying to keep Wall Street safe. And if, I know the hiring managers, I've worked with them in the past, maybe I placed them there. I understand the business. I know what they do for a living. Then it helps flow everything, because then you kind of could tell your candidate, here's what to expect when you meet with Lee. Here's what to expect when you meet with Joe, and so on. And you can kind of give the insights, you can give the quirkinesses, you can know what they like, what they don't like, what's, how your background, and you could really, really sell the background of the candidate, because you kind of understand how both parties work. But if you don't have someone who knows it, then it's just, as Lee was saying, it's just throwing resumes against the wall, because they don't have any value added. All they're doing is a numbers game. And it seems like, Lee, right? Like, you just want to get, all right, let me get a dozen resumes, and I hope that out of that dozen, one's going to stick, and that's it. I'm not going to really bother finding out about the person. It's a big difference between the two.
Oh yeah, very much so. And the other part to that is that's when you become less of that recruiter and more of that coach and consultant.
Yeah.
Not just to the hiring manager, but to the talent as well.
Yeah.
So when you're talking to hiring managers, if you've got a sourcer, they won't push back on a hiring manager. If you've got an SME recruiter, they're going to shape that job description. They're going to shape the recruitment approach.
Yeah.
So big difference. And the latter is much sexier, right? When you get to shape things.
So when you talk about that, let's look at, because you do a little coaching, right? Some career coaching.
Oh, I do a lot of coaching. Aren't we all counselors as recruiters? Aren't we really counselors?
In a way, yeah. I guess there's a difference between doing it where you're actually getting paid for it and just doing it as part of the whole thing. I mean, do you do it as part and parcel, or a little both? So what do you do? Like, how do you, because you could obviously, speaking to just, for the short time we've been talking, you're very passionate about what you do. You're very excited about what you're doing. You really want to see what's best for people and help them out the best you can. So what kind of things do you tell people to help them get a job? How to really sell themselves, which it sounds crass when I say sell themselves, but like the reality is you are, you know what I mean? You're pitching yourself, you're marketing yourself. I don't know the appropriate word, but to help people be their best.
So I think that I need to take you back, not to the womb and how I was conceived, but I think you need to take my story.
It all started with a little girl.
When I was conceived. No. So I'm a high school teacher. By training, I'm a high school teacher. So we do take a lot of psychology. We take a lot of presentation skills. We take a lot of communication classes to do what we do, right, as teachers. And we're constantly teaching and selling concepts. For a candidate, it's not that they have to sell themselves. Selling means that the selling part is getting your resume in front of the right person, right? That's the selling part. Once you are in front of that right person, and that takes knowing your pitch, right? Once you're in front of that decision maker or decision makers, you've got to be able to represent what you do, how you do it, and the impact that you make. And how you are different. And these are big words. So there's differentiators and there's discriminators. You can share what your differentiators are compared to others that they might be interviewing, but what makes you so different that you discriminate yourself from everybody else? That's a term that's used in government RFP responses, right? What is your company's key discriminator? Things that no other company does. Think of that for yourself as well. So when I coach, I won't even represent anybody unless I know they can tell their story. So they have to go through a storytelling training if they can't tell their story, which is a 4-hour workshop. We have to look at their branding, which is their resume and their online content. And then we have to look at how they put their package together. And so until they've got that all together, I won't represent them.
And that's because
Pretty hardcore, huh?
Because I guess it makes sense, because you feel if they don't have all that together, it's just not going to work. And then that's not fair to everybody, for the,
That's right.
for the job seeker, for yourself, for the company, because they're just going to go in there and bomb the interview, and they're going to be disappointed, and the company's going to be disappointed. So you better put all the, hard work. Do you find that there are more people who need that, hand holding and coaching and cheerleading compared to others, or like what kind of percentage? Because I've seen lately just so many, I would say even 80% of the people, or 90% really need that extra help. And then even the 10%.
Yeah.
And because of COVID, I think it really sapped a lot of confidence and enthusiasm and the self-esteem of people who used to have it, but just kind of, they've been beaten down a little bit. So I'm even going to up my number now. It's like 90 something percent. I mean, what do you say?
Well, I can tell you this, that people are so talented. The people that I work with are so smart, and they're so talented, and they're so gifted, but nobody ever taught them how to look for a job.
Yeah.
Nobody ever taught them how to present themselves. My first placement was my father, a PhD microbiologist. I got him, I was 15 years old. He was my first placement. I just so happened to be networked with a former board of directors member at Eastman Kodak.
That's amazing.
Don't
That's
ask
so
me how
great.
this happens. But I introduced the two of them, and my father made almost doubled his income by going from government to industry.
That's so interesting.
So at that point, I realized that my father, as brainy as he was, patents to his name galore, he had no idea how to network, none. And so
that kind of makes sense, because sometimes you have
I don't want him to.
You have the right brain, left brain, right? It's just two different parts. Yeah.
That's not why he's on this planet. You go solve the world's problems and keep us all alive. I'll worry about representing your career from this point forward.
Wait, so he didn't want you to follow in his footsteps? He didn't want you to be a PhD microbiology, whatever it was?
Microbiologist, virologist. Yeah. He traveled the world. He's like the Fauci. He was the Fauci of his industry. Yeah.
Wow.
So really cool guy. Long story short, yes, I would say the majority of people, I would go higher. I would say 95% of the people do not know how to represent themselves or tell their stories, because that's not what they're trained to do.
Yeah.
It's just not their thing. They're expert at doing so many other things. One of my clients had no idea that he drove $10 billion worth of profit in the technology industry. Until I pulled it out of him. I says, what did that marketing campaign do? How did it impact revenue? How did it impact brand? Blah, 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 blah.
I can see that. And it goes back to what we talked about earlier when you said about they don't teach you in college.
They don't.
Every summer I would have interns come in, and paid interns. And I was always stunned, and you think I wouldn't after it keeps happening, that these young people just can't articulate who they are, what they're doing, what they want to do. They can't make eye contact. This is, pre-COVID, where they could come in the office and talk, they wouldn't be able to shake your hand and look you in the eyes and say, hi, Lee, how are you, and have a conversation. And I'm thinking their parents are shelling out 20, 30, 40, 60,000 a year. And they can't even give some freaking coaching. Like, you can't have the career center give them some help. I mean, it was shocking. And then what happens? They maybe fall into their first job, second job, and you're right. And then but they never learned the basics of what to do. And
so I don't know if you've heard of the Digital Assistant Academy. It's a cohort started by a friend of mine, Shyamala Prayaga, who is actually the voice interaction or conversational AI designer for Ford's autonomous vehicles.
Now, is that the woman you're on the podcast with?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Brilliant woman.
Right.
So she creates this program. She IMs me or emails me one day, and she says, I've created this great training program, but Nobody really knows how to tell their story in a portfolio review. Nobody knows how to tell their story during an interview. Nobody can defend their story in front of a panel. Can you please help the students with this section? So we built a whole career capability that's aligned with her program. So now these graduates, these students are going to be able to articulate what they do, how they do it, and how they're different.
Yeah. What would you say?
That's how it should be in every college. And most colleges have a career placement service.
They do.
Ask me what they do.
I don't think they do anything.
Ask me what they do. They bring in companies. That's all they do is they bring in companies to recruit their students.
Yeah.
99 times out of 100, that's all they do. See, now I'm getting passionate.
Yeah. because when you see the flaws in the system, you're like, oh my gosh, and they could be fixed.
Right.
They could be worked on. So it's not something so like how can this ever be fixed? It's just so,
Oh, wait, these are easy fixes.
But these are things that actually, you can do.
Easy fixes. And I will tell you, in terms of in-house recruiters, Katrina Collier, I don't know if you know who she is, but she is also world renowned in the recruiting stage, and she teaches recruiters how to recruit. And her motto is, or her mantra, I should say, is we need to be human and humane about this. That we're not just dealing with the paper, that we're shoveling back and forth between hiring managers and candidates. We've got a human being who's hiring somebody because they have a business goal to achieve. We've got a candidate who needs to put food on the table and also has something to offer. So, the recruiter has a responsibility of thinking humanely about all parties. And so if you're a candidate, that's another great question to ask a recruiter. How do you help your hiring managers? How do you help your customers? And if they don't put the personal business side to it, you're probably working with a sourcer and not a recruiter.
Yeah. I think too, recruiters have to do a better job sometimes being able to say no politely and explaining why they can't help. And not that they're trying to be a jerk or anything like that, but and if, let's say, you came to me and said, hey, Jack, can you place my friend who's in advertising? I really probably can't. I just don't know what to do. You know what I mean? I don't have any pull there. I don't have enough knowledge. I would be throwing a resume against the wall because I don't know what to do. So, but it's so interesting because rather than, and maybe it's, I don't know, this is more of a guy thing, I think too. Instead of admitting and saying, hey, I don't know, I don't have experience in that area, I can't help, they just ghost the person or blow them off and make it like it's like the candidate. It's like the candidate's fault instead of you being honest and saying, I can't help you. Because I even find that I feel bad because when I say I can't help it, you always feel that tinge of, oh, you really don't want to help me. And like, no, I would want to help you. But and then I try to explain how the whole thing works, that, you need to be an expert in your space. You have to understand it. Otherwise, I'm not going to, I don't have the job orders for you. But there's still always that little bit of like, why does he want to help me? So it's, and that goes back to what you're saying. I'll sign up. If you start this, what you're saying, this whole kind of industry, thing that would represent and have the best values and all that kind of stuff, sign me up. I'm aboard because I think that would help. I think that would help both sides because
it would help all sides. So there's three sides to that story. There's the candidate, the recruiter, and then the hiring manager.
Yeah.
But the most important thing is we've got to keep the end game in our minds and the recruiter's mind if we're really going to do justice. But you brought up a really key word, and I'm going to open this one up. This is how recruiters treat recruiters. We talked about that earlier. And then we've got the whole ghosting thing. Yeah. Recruiters have a resentment against candidates who ghost. Candidates have a resentment against recruiters who ghost. And now we've got recruiters ghosting recruiters.
Yeah. Right. It's so ugly.
Why are we doing this? With every ghosting incident that happens, you lessen your integrity. It's a ding against your integrity. It's just that simple. Close it out.
It's true, because then it becomes like it's a socially acceptable to do that. So like, yeah, all right, I'm not gonna get back either. And it's just self-fulfilling and it just becomes terrible.
Yeah, it's not even socially acceptable. It's called a resentment. And then you do it in spite. Well, so-and-so did it to me, so I'm going to do it to this person. And apparently it's okay.
Yeah.
because I was ghosted. We've got to cut that chain. We got
You
to
know what's so
break that
crazy, Lee?
chain.
It's so easy to do this. Like, and I'll get this from candidates, you know, 3 in the morning on Sunday. Hey, Jack, I'm really sorry to say I got a counter offer. So I got to do what's right for my family. I'm sorry. Thanks for understanding. Goodbye. And of course, they know I'm not going to pick up the phone. So, you know, I'm asleep. It's 3 in the morning on a Sunday. But at least they gave the voicemail. You know what I mean? So I wouldn't call that a ghost. I would call that, you know what? I even give them, yeah, but I give them credit because at least they made the call, right? At least they didn't show up.
That's a chicken.
You know what? But at least they said something. But
No, you're much more forgiving than I am.
I am. Because you know why I'm forgiving? Again, I got to say this. Not that I'm a nice guy, because like, you know what? There have been people who F me over, right? You know, maybe went behind my back for a job, you know, did other, you know, and this happens in the industry. This is getting inside baseball, but that happens. You know what? You'll tell somebody about a role and they're like, oh yeah, let me think about it. Yeah. And then next thing you know, they're working at the company. You're like, you son of a, like, you went around my back. But I found over the years, it doesn't pay to carry because I might end up placing that person in the future. And if it's a 25% fee, all right, that made up for my misery. That made up for, like, you know, being screwed over.
So wait, Jack, you would represent that person again?
Maybe, yeah. It depends. If I could end up placing that person, I would put my ego aside, put my hate aside, because if I place them, but if I could, because, you know, think about it, as a business guy, if I could end up placing that person and I know the company wants that person and the company's going to be happy and the hiring manager's be happy and this person gets a job, well, you know what? Yeah, I'll put aside my ego. I'll put it aside.
Let me tell you
But
what
I'm not a Sicilian. Maybe if I was Sicilian, I'd do something different.
Let me tell you what the qualifier would be for that. So
Yeah.
I had a woman, I can count on my hand in the multiple decades that I've been doing recruiting that I got slimed that way. I had a client do that to me.
Mhm.
The hiring manager, which was my company client,
Yeah.
decided to offer her whatever he was going to pay me as a recruiter. He just added that onto her first year base as a bonus. So she went around me and he went around, he went around me.
Yeah.
So at that point, I didn't get mad. I said, that's all right. You're going to get yours, not a problem. Sure enough, not even a year later, guess what? That candidate got slimed by that manager.
Yeah.
So when you were dealing, I'm like you, I don't get mad. I don't hold a grudge.
It just takes too much energy, Lee.
She came back to me a year later and she said, I have learned my lesson. I am so sorry. I will never do that again. And of course I represented her again. Of course, you just have to go through that learning phase. But until they admit that was their integrity is on the line, right? So until they say, no, that didn't work. But I think it's interesting. We're touching on something here, Jack, that not a lot of recruiters are willing to admit. And it's how the recruiter feels about getting slimed by candidates.
Because, you know, and that's why I think by having, and this is what I like about doing these LinkedIn Lives, because when I do these, I'm transparent. I'm open to saying my faults and my flaws and what I do wrong and what I screw up. I have no qualms about that. And I think by doing that, people kind of understand it. Like, I bet you a lot of people, it never even occurred to them that, oh my God, they would go behind your back and get a job. And
you are who you are.
You know,
you're Jack Kelly. And if people are doing that to you, what makes other recruiters think that it won't happen to them?
Because like, especially in my space, why would you do it? Because it's a small world and you're going to find out and you're going to know it. But then the companies would do that too. I can't tell you over the years how many times I'll put, I'll send over a candidate and then all of a sudden, maybe a year, 2 years later, wait, Lee is working at Morgan Stanley? Wait, what? What? I'll call like, how, wait, I sent you, how did, oh, I didn't know. All right. We'll look into it. And sometimes nothing happened. Other times they would make good on it because they knew. They wait. Sometimes what they do is they wait for you in a contract. What you have is like, you have, I'll say control, but that's harsh word. You have control of the candidate for, let's say, 6 months or a year. A year and one day, Lee gets to work at that place. I'm like, you got to be kidding me.
Because they're going around. They're going around the
Yeah.
additional fee. So what does that tell you?
Yeah.
It tells me that candidates
Yeah.
still don't understand the value of a long-term
Yeah.
relationship with a recruiter. They don't know how to have a long-term relationship with a recruiter because why?
Yeah.
Not as a profession,
Yeah.
our recruitment has
Yeah.
become very transactional.
Oh, because it's this, Lee. Hey, Lee, I didn't mean to do it. I didn't know that was wrong. I just assumed that they
Yeah.
were going to pay you, because
Yeah.
I went there and I told them that Jack set me over.
Yeah, no, they know better. We're not that. No, let's not even go there. Let's not even go there. As an industry, I am on this mission that as an industry, I don't
Okay.
care if you are in-house or you
Yeah.
are third party, we have to defend the work and the value that we
Yeah.
deliver on all sides of the desk. If we don't,
Yeah.
we're going to continue to get slimed. We're going to continue
Yeah.
to be, worked on, over, and around. And of course, guess who loses?
Yeah.
Not just us, but the candidate's going to lose and the client's going to lose. It's not fair in any way, shape, or form. So
Well,
that's what we
Well,
gotta
here's
do.
another thing. Here's like another thing that happens too. When you look at, to show you the weird relationship that goes on, if you look at a resume from an internal recruiter, like one of the first things they'll say on it is, I saved the company $20 gazillion because I didn't have to go outside to outside recruiters. So right away, what they're saying is we're giving a big middle finger to recruiters and saying, hey, look, this is how good I am. I'm not using them. So they're like declaring war right away. And then
Yeah.
you'll see that, and then you're working on assignment with them. And you're like, all right, are you using our candidates as cannon fodder for your candidates? So
That's right. It's a fair question. It's a fair question.
Because if you're bragging how you're just doing it without recruiters, but you're using, the services of a recruiter, and this. Now, I know people who are watching this say, all right, you know what, Jack, you're boring me. This is too inside baseball, but it does pertain to you because then that makes sense. Why you're not picked up? Because that means internally they kind of know who they want. And now they're getting filler to show a hiring manager. Oh, here's 10 people. There's 10 people here, but look at this one. This one is good. And and of course it's their person,
Right.
and
right.
and see, those are the things that go behind the scenes that you're not aware of. And why should you be aware of? Because it's just quirky things.
Unless you're Jack or Lee, right?
Yeah.
So if you're one of us, we know how to screen for that. We know how to ask the client company where they are in the hiring process.
What I'm going to bet for job seekers, like they wouldn't know, like all this stuff. Yeah,
the job seeker needs to ask that.
They wouldn't know that this nuttiness.
The job seeker, Jack, should be asking the same questions the recruiter is asking.
Yeah.
They should ask, how many candidates do you currently have in the pipeline? What other resources are you using to fill this candidate pipeline? And how far along are the current candidates in the pipeline in the hiring process? Are you using my resume as filler? Right? We pride ourselves in Maryland as not putting a lot of fillers in our crab cakes. And I pride myself on the same thing in the candidate pipeline with the client. So proof just happened, not even 2 months ago, that the client came to us and said, this is a needle in a haystack that you will never be able to find. I sent them 6 candidates to for calibration.
Yeah.
And I sent them 1 to consider. They hired that 1 person. One represented. And we filled it in 11 days. And the reason being is that because as a subject matter expert, we know what we're talking about. We were able to have the right conversations with the candidate and the hiring manager to make that magic happen. If candidates don't have that level of trust in the recruiter, then they're just going to be one of the many. And that candidate deserves to ask the question, where do I fall in the pile? And where do I fall? And where are they in the process, in the hiring process? So, but I think the recruiters, ghosting recruiters, don't do that.
Yeah. So believe it or not, it's like an hour just went by, Lee. That's nuts.
Well, Jack, we're good.
Anything I didn't ask you or that you want to? I love those glasses. That's cool.
Thank
That's
you.
cool. Cool. My daughter has something like that, like those cat glasses. I guess they're called cat glasses, kind of. I think maybe because they're a little small. Yeah, they're cool.
Yeah, hers will come out a little bit more.
Yeah. So anything I didn't ask you or that you'd like to share?
No, the only thing that I would say in closing this out is know your value.
Yeah.
know your value, the value that you bring, not just in what you do and the impact that you make in the skill and the talent that you bring, but know your value as a human being, right? Don't ever sell yourself short as a recruiter or as a candidate. Once we start doing that and negotiating on what we know to be true, our truth, we lose our moments of truth and we get into jobs that we should not be in. We just shouldn't. And every career move, every job you take is part of your professional portfolio. Think about your career long term, not just in the next 6 months. Where do you want to be? And make sure your next job and next job and next job help you get there.
That's brilliant. That's great.
And
What a
remember that you are the talent. You are the talent. Do not reduce what you do.
That's great advice. What a way to end it. That's perfect advice. I love your passion. I love your energy,
Thanks.
Lee. You're great. If I ever need
Thank you,
help
Jack.
to find a job, I'm looking you up. You're going to help me with my talent agent.
I'd be honored to represent
Yeah.
you. I just don't know what the heck
Yeah.
you do in that financial.
Yeah. I don't know what I'm doing either. I'm just trying to figure it out like everyone else. So, and if you don't mind, I want to invite you back because I was thinking, I like geeking out talking about recruiting stuff. So I was thinking maybe I'll do something where, like for instance, I'm doing a whole series for compliance professionals, like where from senior level CCOs, chief compliance officers, where things are going, where the jobs are going to be. So
Yeah.
I think I want to start getting together like groups of recruiters to do it because I think it's kind of fun to do what we're doing. You know what I mean? Like sharing, here's what's going on. And I think people who are looking for jobs or even not looking for jobs will benefit too, because they're like, oh, I didn't know this is happening. Because a lot of this does cross over to other businesses. We're not the only business that weird stuff happens and there's all these, you can get kind of screwed over and what have you. It's everywhere. So people can relate to that. So if you're interested, I think, let me see if I could get a few different recruiters together in different walks of life and share this. And I think that'd be, a lot of fun for people to listen to.
Whatever you need, Jack, I'm there.
Okay. Excellent. Well, thanks. It's great. It was great meeting you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
My pleasure. Take care. Have a good day.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Hope you enjoyed this episode of the WeCruiter podcast. If you want to check out other great content from WeCruiter, make sure to visit us at wecruiter.io. That's WECRUITR.io. We offer tons of great resources for job seekers and professionals, so make sure to check us out today.